This is Benjamin Boyce and my guest, Poe the Person. We're going to review this book. Well, we're going to ramble about it.
Yeah, something that that I was able to formulate better in my mind after reading Coddling of the American Mind was the idea that it's all connected to safetyism, as they call it. The idea that if something can cause something that can cause something else that will cause you harm, then that first thing, thing A, is dangerous and it's harmful in itself. If it could cause something that could cause something else that could do you harm, then it must be safetyized. It must be made so that it can no longer harm you. You must be made safe from it.
Yeah. And where does that stop? My clever little retweet of the article that we opened up with was that high schools should start pouring bleach into teenagers' eyes so they don't get hurt by words on the internet.
The idea that there's no danger in overprotection, it's assumed that there is absolutely no risk in overprotecting. There's only danger that can come from the perceived risks, but it's not even acknowledged that there's this larger diffuse danger of overprotecting people from things and making them fragile rather than antifragile, which is an interesting concept that they introduced early on in the book from Nicholas Taleb's book Antifragile, which is the being opposite of fragile, meaning that when you encounter bad experiences as a person, you encounter ideas that are different from yours, you become stronger against those things. They no longer can hurt you the way that they did the first time you encountered them, which is only true of a certain number of dangers and not other things.
Yeah, and there are even dangers that begin extremely dangerous, and then you learn not to be fearful of them, and then you learn to master them, and then they become actual tools. Just like, for the stupidest example I can think of, a knife. We protect the child from the knife, and then we introduce certain circumstances in which the child can see how the knife is used, and then use the knife, and then they can go out and carve up, either their enemy's face, or they can make a cute little panda bear for their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever.
One of the first times I heard about this sort of concept, although that was before I heard it was called Antifragile, was I heard that I know you're not supposed to call them Inuit or Eskimo or those people who live in cold places in igloos. Apparently, they raise their children to handle very sharp knives. From as soon as they can hold a knife, the children are they can play with them, because mastery of the knife is important for their culture. They need to be able to skin the seals and the polar bears or whatever they do. And that's probably very racist, I don't know. The idea is that the knife is so important that, it's very unlikely that the child is actually going to kill themselves with the knife by accident. They're just going to, hurt their fingers a little bit. Maybe they'll cut a finger off. That's probably the worst case scenario. But they're not actually going to die from cutting their hands with this sharp knife. What they're going to do is learn how to handle a very sharp knife, which is important for, it's an important part of their culture and their way of life.
Mm-hmm. By that logic, it seems to me that putting helmets and foam on everything is a way to actually, what you're doing is fostering incompetency. That's what you're ultimately doing.
Yeah.
You're robbing people of not just harm, but the ability to do things in the world, the ability to think through ideas.
A large part of the book was talking about how that's been happening with a lot of different dangers that children are now being protected from, such as strangers, doing things on their own, doing things outside without supervision. It's making children weaker, not stronger.
And the same thing in the life of the mind, the same thing.
Yes. And that sort of danger is now being the concept creep, as they also described. The concept of danger is now expanding to encompass psychological danger, the feelings of discomfort from being either insulted, offended, or just having your beliefs questioned, which is quite uncomfortable, as I'm sure you know. We've all experienced a bit of cognitive dissonance, and we know how uncomfortable it can be. But being protected from that is certainly not a good thing, right? It's to keep yourself in an echo chamber intentionally, to be safe from cognitive dissonance is it's a really horrible thing to do to someone. And all of these great untruths, I think, will contribute to unhappiness in a person's life.
Yeah.
The more they practice them in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.